25 Sinister Nebraska Legends Exposed. Discover the haunted stories behind cursed territory. The wind howled like a mournful ghost as Sarah walked the dirt road that led to her modest farmhouse in Thunder Creek. Shadows danced at the edge of her vision, daring her to turn around. She knew the stories whispered by gossipy neighbors, the chilling tales of hauntings, deals made with something dark, things lost forever. Each eerie rustle in the cornfields reminded her of the past and the legacy awaiting her. Her heart raced. Why did she insist on walking these roads at night? It began with a soft whisper, a flicker of sound that could be brushed off as the wind, but it never felt normal. Sarah. It seemed to call her name in a hushed tone. As she turned to look back, the trees twisted into sensational figures, their branches clawing at the air like sinister fingers. She inhaled sharply, feeling cold sweat creep down her back. This wasn't her first night on these paths, yet it felt vastly different tonight. The community that once felt like a warm embrace now felt like a noose tightening around her throat. Thunder Creek had a sinister undercurrent. Chilling legends of the town's founders skated through the hearts of its old-timers. There were whispers of a pact carved in blood, sacrificing the innocent for prosperity. Tales Sarah had dismissed as mere folklore. Now they crawled under her skin. As dusk draped its mantle over the landscape, children on their bicycles scooted by, laughing and taunting one another. But it was just the day before that Jake, her curious 10-year-old, caught wind of the darkness mingling with the light. "Did you hear about the spirits?" Jake had asked, his dreams fueled by the playground chatter. She smiled then, thinking it was all just stories, the type designed to give kids a thrill. But something shifted within her as she made her way home, brewing an anxiety that gripped her heart. Walking past the old school, it loomed large and gray against the starless sky. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Neighbors slinked between their curtains, their eyes darkened with shared secrets. She shook her head, trying to brush the feeling away. Until, the evening, Jake didn't come home. "It's just a game," she thought, trembling in the chilly air. But the shadows were gathering, whispering things she couldn't ignore. Panic slithered up her spine. She dashed through the streets, echoing with silence. Jake's laughter a distant, haunting echo in her ears. Her heart thundered as she reached the high school, its paint peeling like memories gone sour. The night wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. The laughter that floated to her ears wasn't one of joy. It turned icy and dissonant, morphing into cries that tugged painfully at her gut. "Jake!" she screamed, the sound dying too quickly in the stillness around her. Her feet moved of their own accord, urging her deeper into the maw of the abandoned school. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The thrill of hope turned fierce as the chilling realization sunk in. The consciousness bound to Thunder Creek was stretching its claws towards her family. Yet the mystery of Jake's fate loomed large, wrapping around her like a frigid chain. Where was he? The kind faces of the grocery store flickered in her mind, masked by ignorance or complicity. Sarah? The voice slithered from the depths, a promise of darkness. She clutched her chest, her heart hammering as she faced the shadows, each pulse echoing her determination to confront these inherited monsters. But as the last trace of laughter slipped away, a chilling question surfaced. How far was she willing to go to protect her son from the monsters lurking in her own backyard? Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She was alone, trembling in the dark, the air thick with desperation. The voice echoed again, but this time it was accompanied by the rustle of fabric. Something was moving in the shadows. Panic surged through her, pushing her feet into motion. She sprinted down the corridor, desperately scanning the dimly lit spaces around her for any sign of her son. "Jake!" she screamed again, hoping against hope. Silence swallowed her cries, amplifying the dread that knotted in her stomach. The walls felt like they were closing in, each step echoing her fear. She rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a door that hung slightly ajar, the spidery outlines of scrawled messages flaring up like a warning. "Leave now, before it's too late." She pressed her palm against the door, feeling its cold, peeling surface. Fear mingled with curiosity. She needed to know what lay beyond. But the moment she pushed it open, a gust of wind whipped at her face, carrying the faintest sound of laughter, a twisted mimicry of her son's joyful voice. "Jake!" she cried again, clearer this time, her determination solidifying like iron flooding her veins. She stepped inside the room, heart pounding like a war drum. It was a classroom littered with broken desks and yellowed, crumbling papers, remnants of lives once intertwined with this place. There, at the front of the room, stood a chalkboard, as if awaiting the touch of a teacher's hand. But the sinister scrawl on the board told a different story, a list of names. Sarah's stomach plummeted as she scanned the inked letters. Some were familiar, kids she'd seen around town. They were part of the community. But alongside their names was a date. Underneath it, a single word scratched into the wood: gone. As her mind reeled, instinct kicked in. This was more than a list. This was a record of those who had vanished. Her fingers tingled with dread as she traced the letters with shaking hands, fighting the urge to flee. But then, a noise outside the window. She spun around, heart racing. Her eyes caught the faint silhouette of a figure just beneath the flickering streetlight outside. The familiar shape felt like a cruel twist of fate, tugging at her heart in both hope and dread. Could it be Jake? "Mom," the figure whispered, cloaked in shadows. Sarah's breath hitched. "Jake?" she shouted, her voice raw with emotion. The silhouette shifted, stepping into the light. But instead of relief, a shocking wave of horror clashed over her. It wasn't her son. It was a child, but not Jake. The eyes were empty, void of warmth, and twisted in a smile that belonged in nightmares. There was something fundamentally wrong here, and it sent shivers down her spine. "Join us," whispered the child, tilting its head as it stepped closer, the laughter morphing into an echoing chant that sent ice through Sarah's bones. "No!" she screamed, stumbling backward. The classroom felt like it was spiraling away from her, shadows thickening as the child beckoned her. It was almost as if the very walls pulsed with the sinister rhythm of secrets longing to unfold. Before she could react, the classroom trembled, the lights flickering wildly. The names on the chalkboard seemed to shimmer, calling out, and Sarah realized the truth. It wasn't just Jake that was in danger. It was her very soul. With an instinctual push, she ran toward the door. But just as she reached for the handle, the laughter grew louder and the shadow twisted, reaching for her with outstretched hands. As she burst into the hallway, panic surged anew. "Where are you, Jake?" Desperation clawed at her lungs, burning with urgency. But the corridor seemed endless, dark-eyed figures watching from the shadows. The walls felt like they were shifting, trapping her in a maze of terror. "No more games!" she screamed into the void. her voice drowned out by the oppressive darkness. But the response came from inside her, the realization that the darkness had no intention of letting her go. And as the figures closed in, her heart raced with a singular truth. She was running out of time. What if she wasn't just searching for Jake? What if she was meant to join them? The shadows encroached, the air thick with malice. A low hum began to resonate through the hall, the beginning of a chant. Her mind raced as she realized it was unearthing something far older, something that had been waiting. Before she could process, the walls began to ripple like something alive. Sarah gripped the doorframe, forcing herself to stay anchored. But was the pounding in her heart moving towards salvation or doom? As the chanting grew, a chilling question took root. Could she really escape the shadows that summoned her? Would she have to sacrifice more than just her fear to rescue her son? And as the figures seemed to stretch closer, she braced herself against a destiny crawling towards them. What legacy had she unwittingly fractured? In that tense moment, Sarah knew she had to make a choice. Would she confront the darkness or let it swallow her whole? With her heart thundering, she leaned closer to the overwhelming depths of night, ready to chase after whatever horror followed Jake's name. She hesitated, fear clawing at her throat. The shadows crept closer, dark tendrils reaching out, prodding at her resolve. No, was a whisper in her mind, but her heart screamed that she had to act. She couldn't let Jake's fate intertwine with those names on the board. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed through the encroaching darkness, shoving past the chilling whisper of the child. A part of her wanted to turn back, to succumb to the beckoning shadows, but her maternal instincts surged stronger. "I am not leaving him," she shouted defiantly. The corridor spiraled around her like a cyclone, shifting and bending as she ran. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, laughing, mocking her frantic pace. "Mom, come play," their voices taunted, merging into a chorus of despair. But she couldn't listen, she had to focus. At the end of the hall, a door loomed, slightly ajar, light spilling through the narrow opening. Hope sparked within her, glimmering against the oppressive dark. "Please, Jake," she called, desperation puncturing her tone. "I'm coming." She reached for the handle, but it resisted, heavy and cold under her trembling fingers. For an instant, the weight of her fear felt almost unbearable. What if it led to another trap? "Let go." A soft murmur slipped through the crack. It felt like an unseen force was probing her mind, testing her frailty. "Join us. Be free." No, the thought made her stomach churn. She couldn't let them in. She couldn't give in to that seductive voice whispering sweet lies. Mustering every ounce of courage she had, she yanked the door open, stumbling into the light that flooded the small room. The sight left her breathless. It was adorned with photographs of smiling families, carefree moments frozen in time. But the laughter that had once filled this place was now overtaken by an unsettling stillness. At the far wall hung a large mirror, its surface reflecting her wide eyes staring back in horror. Suddenly, the laughter returned, not from outside, but from within the mirror. She watched in disbelief as the glass rippled, morphing into a gloomy scene filled with familiar faces. Each child, once vibrant and full of life, now wore a vacant expression, their eyes trapped behind the glass like prisoners. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their mouths forming a twisted mockery of smiles. Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. They were trapped, bound to the mirror's fate. Instinctively, she stepped back, fear pulling her from the abyss. "Listen to me. If you're in there, if any of you can hear me, fight back. Don't let it take you." Her voice wavered in the silence. But the shadows in the room began closing in again, twisting around her ankles like serpents, pulling her toward the mirror. The laughter grew louder, echoing in her head. It was overwhelming. As she fought to break free, a flicker of warmth surged inside her heart. The love for her son ignited a flame. "Jake, I will save you!" she screamed, pushing against the darkness with every ounce of strength. Just then, the mirror cracked, splintering like glass under pressure. For a tantalizing second, she thought she could see Jake's face among the shadows, his eyes pleading for her to reach him. But before she could fully grasp the moment, a wave of cold enveloped her, pulling her deeper than before. The shadows laughed, the dread descended like a suffocating fog. In the chaos, a final realization hit her like a slap. This was just another trap, another layer to the nightmare. The darkness was alive, hungry, and it would take everything from her if she allowed it. With renewed determination, she lunged toward the mirror, aiming to shatter the barrier between them. This ends now. The moment her hand connected, time froze. Glimmers of light burst around her, a kaleidoscope of hope and terror weaving together. And for an instant, the faces of the trapped children surrounded her. Were they reaching out to her or pulling her down with them? As shards of the mirror flew around her, Sarah felt her world spinning out of control. Would she become yet another soul lost in the shadows, or could she untangle them from this cursed cycle? A single heartbeat rang out, like a clock ticking in an empty room. She was on the edge, teetering between salvation and doom. The cycle hadn't ended, it was just beginning again. And just like that, she felt a cold hand grasp her shoulder. What had she awakened? The hand was ice, sending a jolt through Sarah's spine. She turned, heart hammering against her ribcage, ready to face whatever horror awaited her. She met only darkness, a void that seemed to pulse, alive with a malevolent energy. The laughter faded, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on her. "Jake!" she cried, panic rising in her throat. A heavy dread settled over her, thick and suffocating. With effort, she tore her gaze from the mirror, still flickering with trapped souls. The room felt perilously unstable, the walls swaying like blades of grass in a storm. Muffled sobs echoed from somewhere deep within. Her instinct screamed for her to follow the sound. It was Jake. That faint, delicate call wrapped around her heart, guiding her toward the door at the far end of the room, its ominous frame beckoning her. The moment she stepped closer, arrows of ice shot through her veins. Shadows writhed at the edges of her vision, mocking her desperation with their chimeric forms. "Turn back," they hissed, voices dripping with malice. But she wouldn't, she couldn't. She forced the door open, and it creaked as if in protest. The next room was a stark contrast, lit by a flickering bulb that buzzed ominously overhead. The walls were plastered with scribbled names, all too familiar. The very same names haunting her since she'd gotten here. Children lost to a darkness no one could battle. A chill traced its icy fingers down her back as dread pooled in her stomach. "Jake!" She stepped inside, her voice fighting for clarity against the oppressive silence. The walls seemed to close in, every breath weighted by despair. Shadows flickered in the corners, always watching, feeding on her fear. A quiet snicker echoed behind her, and she spun around, heart racing. Nothing moved, but that laughter, sick and twisted, seemed to seep from the very walls themselves. She pressed her back against the far wall, sweat pooling at her temples. "Mom?" It was Jake's voice, faint but unmistakable, a whisper she clung to like a lifeline. The sound vibrated in the air, and she could almost picture him, lost within this cursed maze. "Where are you, Jake?" Her voice strained, cracking under the weight of her worry. But even as she searched, the darkness pulsed, a living, breathing entity ready to swallow her whole. "Follow me." The voice was different now, soft, soothing. It curled around her heart, coaxing her forward. Could it really be him? Her instincts flared with doubt. She hesitated, mind racing. Was this another trick? "Come, join us." The chorus of children echoed once again, twisted laughter intertwining with desperate cries. The illusion of safety shattered. She was not alone, but surrounded by those caught in the web of shadows. Suddenly, a figure materialized to her right, blurry and indistinct. The shape of a child with hollow eyes, mouth curling into a menacing grin as shadows enveloped him like a shroud. "You wanted to save them? You must join us first." Sarah staggered back, heart slamming in her chest. Just then, the oppressive weight of despair, combined with the sickening sweetness of their words, bore down on her. The choice scrabbled in her mind. Save Jake or succumb to whatever fate awaited her? The darkness winked with mocking zeal, eager to steal her resolve. She fought to reclaim her will. "Not today!" she screamed. The room seemed to shatter into a chorus of giggles, the shadows dancing with delight. "You can't deny it. Join us or lose what you cherish most." The child reached out a hand, its fingers elongated and unnatural. From behind, she heard a familiar, enticing giggle. "Mom!" Jake's voice drifted through the cacophony, full of childlike joy, thinly veiling the horror. "Jake!" she cried, pushing against the malevolent force pressing down on her. "Where are you?" "Here!" Jake's joyful tone echoed from around the corner, pulling her closer. It was nearly irresistible. In a whirlwind of emotion, she felt warmth, a flicker of hope. The figure before her laughed, a sinister peal. "You can't trust him. He's just a shadow now, like us. Come play instead. We can teach you." The flickering light illuminated Sarah's path ahead, revealing two distinct shadows, one beckoning, the other silent. Panic lanced through her. She could feel the divide. If she chose wrong, it might seal Jake's fate forever. "Hold on!" she shouted into the suffocating murk. "I'm coming!" Fueled by desperation, she dashed toward the sound of Jake's voice. The edges of her vision blurred, and the ground shifted beneath her feet, shadowy hands clawing at her. As she reached the corner, the room shifted. The air thickened, and suddenly she was in a playground, a twisted version of the one from her childhood. Rusty swings creaked in a ghostly breeze, and laughter filled the air. But these giggles carried a sharp edge, reminiscent of shrieks. "Mommy, look!" Jake's voice rang clear, but it was tinged with something dreadful. A flash of her son's face appeared before her, childish terror painted across it. He was there. Her heart soared and smashed against her ribs like a drum. "No, no, no, I'm coming," she chanted, moving faster. A thin veil of fog curled around her feet, snaking upwards, threatening to bind her. "Not yet," the twisted child's voice hissed behind her. "Join us, Sarah. You don't belong in the light anymore." "I won't," she screamed, pushing against the shadows that tugged at her like an undertow. "I'll find him." The playground flickered like a dying light bulb. Just ahead, Jake laughed. But this time, the laughter warped, echoing off the walls like a taunt. "Come play with us, Mommy." It was a challenge now, an invitation draped in menace. Sarah clenched her fists, heart hammering louder. Darkness threatened to enclose around her like a vice, squeezing the breath from her lungs. And then she was standing in front of Jake, his form flickering like an old film stuck. Behind him, shadows writhed, eyes gleaming with hunger. "Help me, Mom." His voice trembled with urgency. But as she reached out, the dark figure from before lunged between them, its grasp unwelcome and frigid. "Playtime's about to begin, Sarah." For the briefest instant, Sarah hesitated, caught between the piercing innocence of her son's gaze and the ominous darkness blocking her way. What would become of them both as the shadows closed in? Would she dare to battle the darkness threatening to take everything she loved? The laughter crescendoed, filling the air, suffocating any hope. As the shadows gripped tighter, Sarah's mind raced. Could she rescue Jake, or would she lose him forever to the void? The laughter faded into a bone-chilling silence, but the shadows did not retreat. They pulsated around Sarah, swirling like a storm about to break. Sweat coated her brow as she felt the cold fingers of despair wrap around her heart. Jake's flickering form was too tantalizing, too close, yet always just out of reach. "Mommy!" His voice was a desperate echo, unmet by her outstretched fingers. The dark figure before her grinned wider, revealing teeth that glistened like shards of broken glass. "Only one can be saved," it crooned, each word a venomous caress. "Join him, or let him join us." "No!" Sarah shouted, her voice rasping, but her resolve wavered, fraying like an old rope stretched to its limits. The shadows surged forward, and she stumbled back, barely staying on her feet. The playground swung and swayed, the rusty chains beckoning her closer like seductive vipers. The energy shifted abruptly, and the colors of the playground blurred. The once vibrant hues were drained, dulled into a haunting grayscale, as if the world was fading away. Every structure around her creaked under the weight of the oppressive darkness, bending and twisting like a fragile paper model crumbling in a storm. "Mom, please!" Jake's voice cut through the oppressive air, laced with genuine fear now. "Don't leave me!" A fresh surge of terror washed over Sarah. She couldn't let any darkness rob her of her child. With renewed determination, she pushed past the dread coiling in her stomach. "Hold on, Jake!" she cried, her voice breaking with the strain. The figure stepped forward, slinking toward her, its shadow a wretched April storm cloud, ready to drown her. "Afraid to play? What's wrong, Sarah? We just want to include you." The voice cracked like a whip. Shadows danced harder, their laughter a devilish mixtape of delight and malice that sent chills racing down her spine. "Join us." "No!" she yelled. The word was a lifeline. Taking a deep breath, she willed her feet to move, each step fraught with uncertainty. Between her and Jake lay an unending abyss, teeming with whispers that threatened to engulf her if she wavered. Jake's laughter warped again, edged with something sinister, more than just a harmless invitation. "Please, Mommy, I'm scared." She couldn't look back, couldn't let fear steal her focus. But as she drew closer, shadows erupted from the ground like malevolent serpents, wrapping around her ankles. The child swallowed by darkness was close now, its face twisted into an unspeakable grin, eyes glinting with the allure of escape. "Come play. It's just starting." The shadows quivered, ready to latch on to her. They promised freedom, but whispered secrets that could swallow her very soul. Just when Sarah felt she might drown in despair, she locked eyes with Jake. His face flickered, panic splashed across it, the vulnerability tearing at her strength. "Mom!" "Jake, I'm here!" she shouted, lunging forward, her heart racing, adrenaline pumping through her veins. The shadows grasped at her, instinctively pulling her back, but she fought against them, her fingers clawing at the air. Then she felt a warmth, a fleeting connection. It surged near her, calling her home. She stumbled, reaching for that flickering light between the darkness. "Jake, I will save you!" But the twisted child merged with the shadows, howling, the air thick with despair. "You'll never escape!" With a frantic breath, Sarah lunged again, reaching for her son as darkness closed in on every side. Just a little further, just a moment longer. "Mommy!" Jake's cry was raw, soaked in fear. And in that split second, everything shifted. Shadows collided, and the ground trembled. The world spun as she felt the weight of the darkness lift slightly, just enough to give her hope. But hope was a fragile thing here, surrounded by nightmares. Would it be enough? With determination, she plunged into the void, reaching out again in a desperate bid to grasp her son. But in her heart, a question twisted like a thorn. Would she find Jake or join him in the abyss? In the cool chill of that moment, the playground faded away, replaced now by a dark passage lined with doors, each one tattooed with haunting glimpses of the past. Which door led to Jake, and which would seal her fate? The answers loomed, but fear clawed at her heels as she hesitated, trapped in the shadowy hall. The air thickened around Sarah, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in the silence. She stood at the entrance of the dark passage, its long, narrow stretch illuminated only by the ghostly glow emanating from the doors. Each one whispered secrets of memories once cherished, but now twisted into nightmares. "Jake!" she called, her voice cracking. The sound reverberated down the hall, swallowed by the darkness. A shiver crawled down her spine. She couldn't linger here, couldn't let the shadows suck her into their depths. She glanced at the first door. It stood sturdy and inviting, the wood warm beneath her fingertips. But as she pressed her palm against it, the warmth faded, replaced by the icy breath of despair. Haunting whispers floated through the cracks. Not this one, not here. With dread pooling in her stomach, she moved to the next door, the sound of childish giggles creeping through the seams. It felt familiar, a ghost of a memory. This had to be it. Swallowing her fear, she turned the handle, but it resisted her grip. She braced herself, pushing harder, heart racing. The door creaked open, and the laughter morphed into shrieks of terror. Inside lay a charred playground, long forgotten and haunted. A twisted slide stood alone, coated in ash and shadows, while scattered toys lay abandoned, the remnants of joy now silent specters. "Mommy!" Jake's voice echoed from within, but it was tinged with sorrow. It sent daggers of ice into her heart. She bolted through the door, desperate to reclaim what was lost. As she crossed the threshold, the air thickened, heavy with memories. The darkness pulsated, clawing at her sanity. She staggered, trying to find her footing, as shadows licked at her heels, whispering taunts that twisted her resolve. "Help him, or save yourself," they hissed, each syllable like broken glass scraping against her mind. What will it be, Sarah? Her mind torn, she pushed through with sheer determination. The laughter morphed again, this time into a chorus of her mother's warnings. "Stay away from the darkness, Sarah. It knows your fears." The ground shook, reforming beneath her feet, revealing more doors, each more ominous than the last. A creeping sensation of dread washed over her, wrapping around her throat like a noose. One door stood slightly ajar, a thin sliver of light spilling into the hall. The sight drew her in, but as she moved closer, she saw shadows writhing just beyond it, pulsating with an electric rage. She hesitated, her breath hitching in her throat. The ground trembled beneath her feet. "Mommy, I'm here!" The desperation in Jake's voice surged through her, igniting a fire of hope. Sarah didn't want to let fear bind her. She steeled herself, pushing the door open. It creaked ominously as she entered. Light flooded her vision, and she found herself in a small room with peeling wallpaper, silence deadening the air. In the corner, illuminated by that strange light, stood a mirror. In its reflection was not just her, but whispers of faces. Jake's, twisted and far away. The reflection flickered, teasing her grasp. "Mommy, please!" His plea escaped into the void, raw and filled with anguish. The urge to step through the mirror was overwhelming, but the shadows were gathering, crawling toward her, alive with malice. Clenching her fists, she fought back against the rising panic. "Just hold on, I'm coming!" But which door led to him, and which was salvation? Suddenly, the darkness converged, a wall of swirling despair. Sarah felt her lungs constricting, each breath attracting the shadows closer. "Choose," they whispered, their voices a maddening cacophony. And in that moment, the corridor began to pulse. With wide eyes, she looked down the length of the passage, every door now swirling with chaotic energy. "I cannot let you take him," she screamed, stepping back in defiance. But as shadows curled around her again, uncertainty gripped her heart. Which door would finally lead her to Jake, and which would seal her doom? Time was running out, and the next choice could mean everything, or nothing at all. She could feel the darkness closing in, and now the real question loomed. Could she break free, or would she be consumed by the shadows forever? Each breath felt like treacle in her lungs. Sarah's mind raced, dozens of thoughts colliding, each more frantic than the last. The doors surged with energy, twisting her resolve, spinning her thoughts into a vortex of dread. Every fiber in her body screamed to bolt, run, but the desperate cries of her son anchored her in place. "Mommy, please!" The shadow that was Jake's voice echoed louder, warping through the narrow passage like a distant siren's wail. She couldn't abandon him. He was drowning in the darkness, but so was she. Suddenly, a door on her left swung wide open, revealing a swirling blackness deeper than the rest. When Sarah peered in, she could see nothing but an inky void that seemed to beckon her closer, promising to swallow her whole. Fear pulsed through her veins. "Jake!" she shouted again, the name ripping from her throat like a warning. The shadows hissed in response, an angry symphony echoing her hesitation. Without thinking, she reached for the ajar door, fingertips grazing its cool edges. It felt alive beneath her hands, vibrating in response to her touch. Heart pounding, she yanked it open wider. The darkness yawned, alive and breathing. She stepped in, almost entranced, only to find herself falling into an abyss. As she plunged into the void, the sensation of weightlessness seized her. The air turned electric, time suspended. And then, with a jolt, she hit the ground hard, landing in a sunlit meadow filled with wildflowers. What was this? How could it exist amid the torment? Sarah gasped, scrambling to her feet. The morning sun bathed her in warmth, but the memory of the cold shadows lingered, clinging to her. It felt unreal, like a fragile bubble about to burst. "Jake!" she yelled again, spinning, searching for anything familiar. But the meadow was silent, a deceptive facade masking the reality lurking beneath. She felt it in her bones, the change in the air, the shift in energy. The flowers wilted, their colors fading into gray as the ominous whispers returned. "Choose wisely," they taunted, the twisted voices wrapping around her, this time unified and sinister. Panic surged, clawing at her throat as she spun back towards the door, desperate to escape. Was she in a trap? The realization hit her like ice. She was still in that hallway. This was just another trick of the dark. Heart hammering, she raced back, but the door fractured away behind her, crumbling into dust as she stepped through. She stood in the hall again, contemplating the oppressive doors. Each one seemed eager to consume her. A memory twisted in her mind, her mom's warnings about the darkness. "Don't look into the past. It wants to take your soul," her ghostly voice echoed in her head. Fear twisted inside her gut. Focus, she thought. The shadow of Jake's voice still trembled in her mind. Which door led to him? Her eyes darted, landing finally on one at the far end of the corridor that flickered with a soft shimmer, almost like hope. "Sarah!" It was Jake again, his anguished call cutting through the thick air. This was it. She had to trust her instincts. Each step toward the door felt like an eternity, shadows swirling, almost tangible against her skin, urging her to turn back. But she pushed forward, refusing to yield to their twisted allure. As she threw open the door, a blinding light engulfed her. It was a staggering shift, knocking her breathless as she stumbled into another realm entirely, bright and surreal, yet marred by an underlying chill. And then the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. She whirled around, frantically searching this new place, when she caught sight of him through a veil of pale fog. "Mommy!" Jake cried out, emerging in the distance, his image flickering like a broken video. But no, and something wasn't right. He was fading as quickly as he appeared, and the shadows she thought she left behind grew denser. "What's happening?" Desperation crawled into her voice. "Jake!" "We can't stay here," he shouted, but his voice slipped away like sand through her fingers. Now, Sarah stood trapped between two realities, fear coursing through her, knowing the shadows were only a heartbeat away. "I need to save him," she gasped, facing the encroaching darkness once more. Every second felt like a countdown. Her pulse quickened, trapped between possibilities and impossible choices. What if she didn't save him this time, and he fell into the darkness forever? The next heartbeat could change everything, but at what cost? The shadows swirled hungrily around her, a relentless tide of darkness that seemed to pulse with its own sinister heartbeat. The fog wavered, teasing her with glimpses of Jake. Each flicker of his form brought a surge of hope, only to be snatched away as the shadows thrashed against the light. "Stay still!" she screamed, her voice cracking, desperation ripping through her. As if her words contained magic, Jake paused, his face etched with fear. "Mommy!" His voice trembled, the word resonating like a plea. "You have to hurry!" Time slipped through Sarah's fingers like water, each second thinning the line between them. She tried to reach out, to go to him, but the deepening darkness threatened to engulf them both. "Jake!" she cried, feeling as if the very fabric of reality was weaving tighter around her. Without thinking, she sprinted forward, her heart thundering in her ears. But the moment she touched the edges of the fog, it shifted violently, swirling and twisting like a demon unleashed. The ground trembled beneath her, sending her tumbling backward. She landed hard, her breath knocked out of her lungs. "Jake!" His figure shimmered, wavering against the chaos. "Mommy, please!" He stretched out a hand, reaching for her. Time seemed to stretch, the space between them distorted. Just as hope reignited within her, the darkness lunged, tendrils reaching out, brushing against her skin like icy fingers. A scream clawed at her throat. The tendrils twisted, tugging her back toward the shadows. Panic ignited in her veins, fighting against the icy grasp. "No!" she yelled, a primal roar of defiance. "Don't let it take you!"
Jake's voice pierced through the cacophony. Clenching her fists, Sarah summoned every ounce of strength. "I won't lose you!" She dug her heels into the trembling ground and raced toward him, defying the darkness. Jake's figure shimmered closer, but with each step it flickered like an unreliable light, and she struggled against the current that almost pulled her back into despair. The shadows hissed, a cacophony of all her fears manifested. "Leave him! He belongs to us!" Desperation surged like poison, quickening her pace. The tendrils of darkness coiled tighter around her legs, dragging her down, insistent and relentless. She could feel the chill creeping up her body, stealing her warmth. Her breath quickened. She had to fight. "Jake!" she cried, feeling the ground beneath her begin to give way, transforming into a chasm of swirling darkness. The tendrils tightened, and she fell back again, a net of darkness ensnaring her. "Mommy!" His voice sobbed through the growing void. Time twisted and warped around them, his image flickering between dream and nightmare. In one final desperate attempt, Sarah yanked herself free from the shadow's grasp and lunged forward, stretching out her hand. The electric connection between them thrummed, a sudden spark igniting the air as their fingers brushed. In that moment, the world around her split apart, exploding into blinding light as waves of energy surged. But it hit her like a thunderclap, a revelation laced with terror. In saving him, she could doom them both. A flicker of darkness pulled at her shoulders, whispering promises of safety and surrender. The shadows coiled, anticipating her response, darkening the edges of her vision. She faltered, heart pounding with the weight of her choice. "Let go! Join us!" The shadows offered a chilling siren song, pulling her thoughts into a spiraling chasm. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she knew what she had to choose. But every heartbeat counted. Could she risk losing herself and forever slipping away from Jake? "No, I won't!" she screamed at the shadows. But the choices lay heavy as the light began to dim around her. The world faded, teetering on the brink of eternal night. As reality blurred, she felt herself sliding into a desperate decision. What would emerge from the abyss, despair or salvation? Time was running out. In that haunted litany of choices, Sarah's heart stuttered but surged with defiance. "No!" she shouted again, louder this time. The words poured from her, resolute as she clawed her way through the tendrils of darkness. She would not give in, not today. As reality blurred, she felt herself sliding into a desperate decision. What would emerge from the abyss, despair or salvation? Time was running out. In that haunted litany of choices, Sarah's heart stuttered but surged with defiance. "No!" she shouted again, louder this time. The words poured from her, resolute as she clawed her way through the tendrils of darkness. She would not give in, not today.
The shadows reacted like a tempest, swirling violently. They thrashed around her with a fury, desperate to pull her into their sordid clutch. Yet with every inch she fought, she felt the pull of a different power, one anchored in love, tethered to her son. "Jake," she cried, her voice piercing the chaos, "I am coming." With renewed clarity, she raced toward the image of her son. Time stretched like taffy, each heartbeat synchronizing with the desperate echo of Jake's laughter, a siren song blending delight with despair. But now she saw it. Beyond the flicker of his form, shining brighter than ever, was the truth. Love held the power to dispel even the darkest shadows. "Hold on, Jake," she urged, driving every ounce of her will into the outstretched fingers reaching for him. "We're together in this." The moment their hands connected, warmth blossomed between them, lacing through their fingers like sunlight piercing through clouds. The shadows roiled, screeching as the brightness ignited. Flickers of dark smoke recoiled, but it grew too late. The walls of despair began to tremor as the energy between them ignited a radiant blaze, illuminating the darkness with blinding light. "Mom," Jake's voice swelled, now vibrant and filled with happiness. The laughter that danced around them transformed into a joyful chorus, a signal of hope breaking free from the shadows. Then came a rush, a wave of light bursting forth, shattering the suffocating gloom. In an electric heartbeat, the chambers of the shadowy labyrinth crumbled like brittle paper, leaving behind a brilliant expanse where shadows dared not tread. Every name once etched into the walls, every soul ensnared, flickered and dissolved into a gentle breeze, freed at last. For the first time, Sarah's breath felt like the warm, sweet taste of spring air. She turned to Jake, and their eyes met with an understanding that transcended words. "We did it," she breathlessly wept, pulling him into her warm embrace. "I'll always fight for you." But even within the jubilance, echoes of lingering sorrow hung like fog. She turned to the dissipating darkness, knowing not every soul had the chance to escape. Those names would remain as eternal whispers. But in guiding her son back, perhaps she had rewritten her own fate, severing the ties that bound them too closely to fear and despair. "Let's go home," she whispered, brushing the tears from her cheeks. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, out of the remnants of broken shadows, marking their path back to the world where joy still existed. As the sun broke across the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and hope, Sarah felt light coursing through her. Healing would take time, and the weight of those lost would never truly leave her. But they were alive, their family grounded in love, laughter, and memories waiting to be created, untainted by dark creases of past terror. "Let's go home," she whispered, brushing the tears from her cheeks. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, out of the remnants of broken shadows, marking their path back to the world where joy still existed. As the sun broke across the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and hope, Sarah felt light coursing through her. Healing would take time, and the weight of those lost would never truly leave her. But they were alive, their family grounded in love, laughter, and memories waiting to be created, untainted by dark creases of past terror. "Let's go home," she whispered, brushing the tears from her cheeks. Hand in hand, they stepped forward, out of the remnants of broken shadows, marking their path back to the world where joy still existed. As the sun broke across the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and hope, Sarah felt light coursing through her. Healing would take time, and the weight of those lost would never truly leave her. But they were alive, their family grounded in love, laughter, and memories waiting to be created, untainted by dark creases of past terror. Thunder Creek would recognize a new day, and for Sarah and Jake, the whispers of anguish were replaced by echoes of victory. And it was there, in the fresh and warm dawn, they paused at the threshold of their modest farmhouse, the painful legacy finally laid to rest. No shadows lingered, just warmth from the sun washing over them like a gentle hug. "Together, always," Sarah pledged, letting the weight of the sun warm her soul. Home. That felt right. It was a new beginning. As they stepped inside, ready to rebuild what was lost, the screen flickered and the channel faded to black. Before we finish, I need you to take action right now. Subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss any upcoming exclusive stories. Your support is crucial. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. It seriously makes a huge difference in spreading the stories you love. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this ending. I want to hear everything you feel. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support for our stories. Only true fans understand the importance of these actions.